Dans liu sumba, Janju Sem, Yosu Son, Liu said, I didn't ma Adambo on the Jesuira, Jedire, Takasan on the Karshubarelana, the Jesuira de Lea, and Javachima, Ladami Yukoban, Toyadi, Dangan Sungi, Mansole Tarchi, Tia Ladami Yukoban Toyadi, on the Masuvine, then Nesun. 나수베 네티기 라다미 티기 주요요 바제 제사다 데네기 라다미 고바 도시는 아주 삼다에 되는 바제 나손은 개바이나 동아 데네데 빠도 메바 동아 용구요 바다 텐텔이야 개와 줍투이 메바 개와 주요 고바 메바 도시는 삼다 데네 삼다네다 델레 타르제네 아니 라다미 고바 토바이네 어텐델이야 아니지 나손그 동아레 타르 나손그 동아 용 모고와 아니 델야 하다미 디기 묘아 아니 텐텔라 아주기 게저 타르바다 탐지 캠비기 고원토야 개와카시 가와드는 줍투에 유바 인자 아니 지금 밀리 하다미 고원 텐데 데네게 따자 침보다 게치보 인바 삼다 데네 삼다에도 데네게 하다 미요 고원 토비 유단 토에 유개와 수심소야라서 바다 진변냠내 쇠바다 준주라서 바 아니 지금 몰람 다비알라서바 모두신의 개월 주에 되게 하다 미고 본토에 유디게다 배야고래샤 선비게다 두신의 김제 삼다위 토네 나다 미고 본토에 유 아주 류마 예수님 주디베 주름송야도 서보금야 더 진변님의 개월 주에 돼 소소게 되네 제바디게 미디네 좀 배야고래샤 선비게 아니 제수이라 제하다 현기 되는 냠내자 오코랑소에 되는 냠내자 되네기 계속 주에 배야고래 선비다 라다 미고 바토요 규 개발에 지수 일하지야 직제 다디 제보 라다 미고 방 톱제다 다지게 대시셰바나지 김전 삼다 라다 미고 방 배야 그래샤 선배게 다 덴델에 계사 주 탈바 탐지 김배 개와 주야기 빠도메 봐 예바디 배야 그래 선배데 덴델에야 제보 아니 제 라다 미고 방 델에야 아니 지수 일 배야 그래샤 소소 텐디 토바데 배야고 중샤 선바다 미션기네 텐기 텐 토데 배야고 중샤 선배다 지수이라 제야 되는 거 다 그신 쉬어야 되더라다 베네 라다 미고 방 토비기 규 개발라 지수이라 제바단 제부 라다 미고 방 델레야 지수이라 제바스 그신 디슈버란다.
Good evening. Last week then, we started with the third chapter, the chapter called Embracing Bodhicitta, or Taking Hold of Bodhicitta. And we looked at the third verse, which is that of rejoicing. And in particular, one was rejoicing in the rebirth that we have attained, that is, and as a rebirth in the higher realms. And for one to rejoice in this rebirth that has been attained, one does so with an understanding of what it would mean to have been born in the lower realms, where the suffering is immense compared to what can be experienced as a human, and moreover, it's incredibly difficult to accumulate causes. If one's born in the lower realms, it's incredibly difficult to accumulate causes that will lead to one being born out of the lower realms. So therefore, one rejoices in this rebirth that one has attained. Moreover, one recognizes that born in the high realms, it's not what is worthy of rejoicing is not merely that one is suffering much less than otherwise, but that one has the potential to accumulate the causes that will lead to further good rebirths, and in particular, progression towards liberation and enlightenment. This is the particularly great characteristic of being born in the happier migrations. So here, one recognizes the causes that have led to such a rebirth, as well as that these causes need to again be accumulated for ongoing good rebirths. And these causes are firstly ethical restraint, secondly generosity, thirdly patience, fourthly joyous perseverance, and fifthly prayer. So here we rejoice in having achieved this result, as well as our endeavors to accumulate causes that will lead to similar results in the future. And so that's in terms of oneself. then one also rejoices in others who have achieved a similar result, a result in the high realms, recognizing the causes that they accumulated that led to this result, as well as those in the high realms now who are, or the happier realms, who are accumulating similar causes for such rebirths in the future. So in brief, what we looked at last week is rejoicing in terms of oneself and others, in terms of both the results of a higher realm rebirth as well as the ongoing causes for ongoing higher realm rebirths. So causes and results as well as in relation to oneself and others.
So the
rejoicing is a mind of taking delight in virtue, and this act of rejoicing or taking delight in virtue creates virtue. So therefore, the meaning of rejoicing is taking delight in virtue, and this mind of delight is itself a virtuous mind, and this is how virtue is accumulated through rejoicing. So the verse that's been looked at was the causes that lead to rebirth in the higher realms, as well as the result of rebirth in the higher realms. Now we come to the second verse, which is looking at the causes, rejoicing in the causes that lead to liberation, as well as the result, or as well as rejoicing in the result of liberation.
The
second verse, I rejoice in that accumulation of virtue that becomes the cause for enlightenment. I rejoice in the certain liberation of sentient beings from the sufferings of samsara. So the first two lines are rejoicing in the causes that lead to liberation.
And the Janchup Sura, Janchup Titadi, the Janchup said dire. Chesada, Nyandu Danda, Janchup said, Nyandu Dajumitivu Toya Dang, and the Ranja Dajumitivu Toya Gu, Gavas or Daje, Janchu Julia Gasapa, said Chesa, Nyandu Dajumitivu Toya Gi, and the Sabi Gavati Da, Ranja Dajumitivu Tobi Chidu, Yamnaji Gu, Gawa, Lamir in particular, that Janchu Julia Gasapa said this word.
Looking at the first two lines, I rejoice in that accumulation of virtue that becomes the cause for enlightenment. So there are three types of enlightenment. There's a small enlightenment, a middling enlightenment, and a great enlightenment. Here, this enlightenment refers to the small and middling, which is the enlightenment that is striven for and achieved by hearers and solitary realizers. So hearers attain a small enlightenment, often called liberation, and solitary realizers attain a middling enlightenment, also often called liberation. So here, one is rejoicing in the causes that will lead to the small and middle enlightenment.
Jinyamnegi Rimbati Gavati, the Nigga some Daj Dele, Akure, some Sandayadida, Jeso Janchup, 자주 규율 계산을 될지 소이랑과 세디 선고를 당하지래 년도에 저쯤에 저보다 란제 저쯤에 저보 토역에 탑람 람냠니 림바디 파 삼다 배약보래 디곰발에 되는 저쯤에 저보 톱투고래 대비시고 야보지래도 와삼백에 삼노디 나 디소르다 자주기 규율바세데 년도에 란제에 자주기 6개월 소이랑 와서야 돼.
Again, with these first two lines, one is rejoicing in the causes that are being accumulated by hearers and solitary realizers. So these virtuous mental paths that they are developing that will lead to their attainment of small and middling enlightenment.
다 개와디 야보레 섬디 야보레 섬바다 디 규와 규딩아 저기도 섬다는 뭐여 송고 거와 당 뭐여 송비 간데스 뭐여 송거선 베네나 년도 자침베 제보르 섬담베나 당은 주에 다 코와리아 코와 감숨 코와리아 제 규엔다 닝보메바 통제 다 델레 닝보메 통도 코웨 델레 탈비게 탈바디 토고도 세베 탈바도니 섬다 뭐 탈바도니 섬로디게 다디 탈바도니 섬로 델레 데네 타바도 유사고와 지선 당보 타바 코르의 동아디 교인 통에 삼는 통 교인동 대 코르의 동아 유디 다 교인 통화 유디 가르레고스네 유군주데 발레다 녀몽바들레 기고레스비 디디 유 군주데 바 세데 레다 녀몽바 군주데 바시고와 제부 동아데 바 유군주데 바세로와 지선 den시셰도 제나당은 코르의 동아 감숨이 동아디게 삼다도 이 제보디 제로와 디 규디 안 데소갈레 용세네 군주 템발레다 녀모 바티네 용고레스 제자 데네자 엔주 코르 동아데라 타고데 델라 타발라 아니 디 규녀모 바차산 빵고도 제자 델라 타고도 선비게 탈타는 탈비게 코르 동아리아 꾼다 델라 타도게 삼바 탈바세데 마도 타면도 탈바 토고도 선비게 두스네 삼다이데 이 고미야데 가서 냠능이림 바 당보디 차 책으로와 제사 검진은 탈바도니로 삼로 좀 많이 뵙게도 안 남길에 개발해 시고르다 언제 도시네.
In order to actually be able to rejoice in the causes that will lead to the small and middling enlightenment or liberation, one needs to know what those causes are, and one needs to know them to the extent that one actually values such causes. So what the causes are that will lead to the attainment of liberation or small and middling enlightenment is through reflecting well on the faults of samsara leading to a yearning for liberation to arise. And this is done through meditating deeply on true sufferings and true origins. And it's through reflecting well on the sufferings of samsara as well as the origins of sufferings of samsara that one gives rise to a yearning to be liberated from samsara. And when that yearning is uncontrived, then one has given rise to uncontrived definite emergence. And this is the cause that will eventually lead to the attainment of liberation or small and middling enlightenment.
어떤 예중에서 뭐 쩨마 많이 뵙기네 다 두스네 쩨마 많이 뵙기는 람디 다 두시게 제 다된 계산이 되네 안에 진변념는 제바다 하는 저기 최고부여 초사 딥장 디버샤야 초사야 라서바다 최고부여 때 개화사야 지여로와 개화사 되네게 사네 다음에 봐 또야다 다음에 봐 미비 신의 주야라서바 어두스네 다음에라 미비 간사 다음에 봐 미비게 실라 송제 마토바 간사 다음에라 마데비 되비 실라 송제 마토비게 바기다 냠냠네 기바텔라 때들이야 소람세고 소람세데 달람 람가시벤 소람 졸람 토나고나 밀로람 생각나네 달람 당보디레 다 타버토예게 가서 년퇴를 시베나 간사 다음에 가서래 당보 코르에 동을 끼는노 데레 코르와 탈바 토고도 선배게 예중의 삼바 쩨마만이 바 토고 선배 쩨마미게 다 디게도 소람 줄에 깨와리다 저 소람 다 소람 줄에 때는 텔이야 안다 간사 다음에라 미비게 lao 마토기 바라들라 디바라들라 게조르비아단 진바에 냠는지야 쇠베 냠는지야 아니 지게 소사야든 디바자야 쳐보부야 아니 게외신이야 고말라서 미다바 고면서 되는게 냠레를 봐 차선 초람래다 디가서 디 림바딜라 촐람무시고 다디 맞아 타바 토야리야 귤마서 람지림바 당보디샤고래.
So the practitioner will meditate well on true sufferings, true origins, giving rise to the uncontrived definite emergence. When that has been generated, uncontrived definite emergence, then the path of accumulation, the first of the 5 paths, is attained by that hero or solitary realizer. So the 5 paths are the paths of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more training. The entry point into the first, the path of accumulation, is the generation of uncontrived definite emergence, which itself is the yearning to that is uncontrived to achieve liberation from samsara. That is generated through reflecting well on the faults of samsara, true sufferings, and true origins. When the path of accumulation is achieved, then the practitioner, in this case, someone of hero or solitary realizer lineage, strives to accumulate merit through a variety of practices such as generosity, reflecting on impermanence, on meditating on the qualities of the spiritual teacher, and so forth. And they also will be meditating on selflessness. But the path of accumulation has as its entry point the generation of uncontrived definite emergence, and it has as its culmination the attainment of the union of calm abiding and meditative insight on the subtle topic of selflessness. Throughout that period between the realization of selflessness with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight and the generation of definite emergence, that is the path of accumulation of a practitioner of hero or solitary realizer lineage in this case.
Dene kansa dame la mi bige ta shine tu dene kansa dame la mi bige laodong dupje ta laodong tobyo de shila sonje kansa dame la mi be shila sonje tobrowa 지상 디 라동 토면도 내 절람바세 최고래 다디 먼저 kansa dame la mi bige shine tu shine 딩 안에 kansa dame laodong tobyo kansa dame la mi bige shila sonje se tobare shila sonje tobyo 당아서 년대 절람바세 최고 년대 절람바 되는 실라 손들 톱네 간사 다음에 원숨도 또 비게 마도 바도 디바라게 단 냠내 기름 바지 지킨들다 자수 절람세 오래 년대 람델에 절람세 오래 대 간사 냠내 제 간사들 절람바세 오래다.
The boundary for the path of accumulation for the practitioner of hero or solitary realizer lineage is from starting with the generation of uncontrived definite emergence until the selflessness is realized with a mind that is the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. That moment when selflessness is realized inferentially with a mind that is the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, that is the boundary where the practitioner attains the second of the 5 paths, the path of preparation. And the path of preparation is where the practitioner continues to meditate on selflessness with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, striving to come to realize selflessness directly for the first time. And so this is what they are preparing for, the direct realization of selflessness. And the direct realization of selflessness, again with a consciousness that's a union of calm abiding and meditative insight, that represents the beginning of the path of seeing. So until then, from the inferential realization of selflessness until just before the direct realization of selflessness, the practitioner is on the path of preparation.
onda gaza daimyo ngosumdo toyodo da tonglam taware tonglam siyo ngosum toyodo tonglam chabare da sansamdene gaza daimyo ngosum toyodo ko gaza de tonglam basiore dene lamde tonglam siore da dene ya nyomo bapaya de gozuore gozuya de dene ya gozuore 자자 다 가사 다음에 ngosumno to 차네 다 denma ane 안지 냠샤치 dene namro jiklang dene ya chosa dene 양자다 냠샤 산선 마소나 디바라들다 가소리 뇨모바 가사게 뇨모바 랭기 then Yomo Langela Guru Jimber Masinary, Yomo Rabaruchi, Rakshochuan, Langera, Gunda did a Tonaminas Panducore. The Gunda di Bansache, Langi, Nane, the Raksho di Banyago, Gomazu Bardo, and Della Tonampasi or Tonampasi or. Then Langi di Bayagi, Langi, Rapatine, Banya, Gozuba Dine, Sunje, Digi, Nimbodi, Gine, Deva Giandu, Gomlamba Chayomore. Jazan Yomoba. Langi Raksho di Niembo Maje Bardo, Kanza Dami Osum to Sarche, Nidipara de Gunda di Bangor, Kanza da Nyomo Rakpa, Langi Rakpa di Mugi Niembo di Maje Paradilla, Kansa de la Lam de la Tolam Sigore, and Kansa de la Tolamba Sigore, in a dela Yun Tunujba Jerash, Yunibu Young Mens at the Yuntua Ben, and the Shibu Yunibura Mens or other.
The entry point to the first path, the path of accumulation, is a generation of uncontrived definite emergence. So this is for the practitioner who's striving for the small and middle enlightenment or liberation, the here and solitary realizer. Their attainment of the path of preparation, the second path, comes when selflessness of persons is realized with a consciousness that is a union of calm abiding and meditative insight. When they then come to realize selflessness of persons directly, that is when they enter into the path of seeing or the path of realization, the third path. And here, with the attainment of the path of seeing, where selflessness of persons is now directly realized for the first time, the acquired afflictions are abandoned. After that meditation session, they enter a period of subsequent attainment, and then once again enter into meditative equipoise on selflessness, and now they start to abandon the coarsest level of the innate afflictions, and this also marks the commencement of the fourth path, the path of meditation. So the path of seeing is a short path. It just comprises the direct realization of emptiness for the first time, of selflessness for the first time, and the abandonment of the acquired afflictions. So it is a short path. When the yogin again enters meditative equipoise and starts to abandon the coarse innate afflictions. The innate afflictions have degrees of subtlety. So when the coarsest level of the innate afflictions start to be abandoned, that is the commencement of the fourth path, the path of meditation.
And dele gomlam se da gomlam se gere da dene ma jine ane nyo mobile hangi de kasal hangi sabona jepa ma bang bardu lam de la gomlam se gore dene bang chane da nyo mobile dene sabon de je bang yo du dene bang chai wi ge lam de la milob lam se gore milob lam es ga za de la milob ba se ro wa lam de la milob lam se gore da di cha chom ba top sa ro wa de.
So when selflessness of persons is directly realized for the first time, that consciousness, which is a union of calm abiding and meditative insight, realizing selflessness directly, that consciousness has the power to be the direct antidote to the acquired afflictions. They then are abandoned on the path of seeing. When the yogin again enters a meditative equipoise, realizing selflessness directly with the union of calm abiding meditative insight, now this realizing consciousness is of sufficient strength to be the direct antidote to the coarsest level of the innate afflictions. This then marks the path of meditation. So the afflictions can be divided into two, acquired and innate. Innate then have degrees of subtlety to them, and they are abandoned. the degrees of subtlety of innate afflictions are abandoned over the path of meditation. When they have been abandoned completely, then the path of meditation is concluded and the practitioner attains the path of no more training and becomes an arhat or foe destroyer. So again, this is in the context of a hero or solitary realizer, a practitioner striving for their own individual liberation.
다 가자 담메라미 베 년들이 시월다 년들이 솔음치르와 다 가자 담메라미 베 실라 손르 톱네 아니 가자 담메 원순도 마토베게 디바라데라 졸람지 년들이 졸람지르와 다 가자 담메 원순도 또네 아니 녀몽 가자 년집 녀몽 현지지 원님 맞게 바라데라 디바라데라다 통람제 다 녀몽 한지 용원인지 깨바네 송제 아니 녀몽바 한지 사보나 제바 마방기 바라들라 네 곰람제로와 다 녀몽바 사보나 제바 빵차여도 남들라 아니 밀럽람세 어두시 남가디다 두시는 삼다이래.
So the 5 paths then for a practitioner striving for their individual liberation or for the attainment of small and middling enlightenment, so the hearers and solitary realizers, they attain a path, the path of accumulation when, having meditated well on the faults of samsara and they have generated uncontrived definite emergence, that is when the path of accumulation is achieved. And there they accumulate extensive merit as well as meditating on the selflessness of persons over the period of the path of accumulation. When selflessness of persons is then realized inferentially with a union of calm abiding and meditative insight for the first time, the practitioner progresses from the first path, the path of accumulation, to the second path, the path of preparation. Now on the path of preparation, they continue to meditate on selflessness of persons with a realizing consciousness, that's a union of calm, abiding, meditative insight, and continue to realize selflessness inferentially. And this is over the course of the path of preparation. When they come to realize selflessness of persons directly, that is when they cross from the path of preparation to the path of seeing or the path of realization. And the path of seeing is short. Now they've realized selflessness of persons directly. And that direct realization is of sufficient strength to be the antidote to the acquired afflictions. After that first meditative equipoise, they enter subsequent attainment, and when they re-enter meditative equipoise, now they're realizing their consciousness that is realizing selflessness of persons directly is of sufficient strength to start the process of abandoning the innate afflictions together with their seeds, starting with the coarsest level. And this marks the entry to the path of meditation, the 4th path. And over the path of meditation, they progressively abandon from coarser levels of innate afflictions together with their seeds down to subtler levels. And eventually, when the innate afflictions together with their seeds are completely abandoned, then the 5th path, the path of no more training of a hero or solitary realizer is attained, and they become a foe destroyer or an arhat.
당은 저게 란제 대중이 되고 토에게 탑람 냠는 이름바디야 다 년에 란제 초람 졸람 통나 고람 밀로람 세디 림방가 여러 와다 손스디와 단 지바레 람가림 바임바 지바체 다 델이야 다데 냥아 저게 좀다 녀 지라마와나 도데버게 송상다 다냐 저기 샘잠바다 우마베 송다 양데스 가요레 지라마와다 도데버 송나 갈 송거스네 랑자다 년뒤에 람조나 지버레 대신 년뒤 셰바나 지부지가레 다 랑자다 년 대시 년도에 값을 해야 되다 지부 지가래 랑제의 냠내지다 지부 지가래 제 아 대신에 년도기 교시에 봐 디다 지부 지가래 개발하여 말이죠 남이 당봉해 주지 남곰네 곰자 가서 다음에 미부금 두셔야지 지바래 제 가르 개발 열어놨네 랑제디기 로윤리나 초사고래지 초람이야서 로 망아 초사고래스 베네 랑 년도디기 초람이야서 베네 균 통화사고래스 랑제디기 균링아사고래스 데니기 개발마도 셴도나 지바래 제라마도 되리벽에서 공 제삼 제시잡다디
These 5 paths and their boundaries, their entry and conclusion points, are the same for hearers and solitary realizers. So what's just been presented is the same for hearers and solitary realizers. But in terms of the different philosophical schools, they do make some differences. So for the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, they state that there's a difference in terms of the duration of time that it takes for a hearer and solitary realizer to progress along the 5 paths, because a solitary realizer needs to accumulate so much more merit than a hearer. So the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika make this distinction between the hearer and solitary realizer, with the solitary realizer taking significantly more time to progress through the 5 paths.
semzambada umabage karjishike gorsene tanyendu da rayin yelera nyamlami rimba jiba yimbala karikhe barasene gomje zo de la khaba yoresen deji gomyege zo deji nyendu garsan gasa dame gomja deji garasene nyendu yi gar gongusene gasa dame gomyege tawa gasa dame gonguma 동반이다 니동스키 시고 말아봐 근데 nyendu gar 쳐야지 gasa dame la mi be shine ru pla동 ru tene ya ru gorwa 어다 우마베게 semzambada 우마베시디 랑제 예급소 아니 가사 다음에 공고레스 니가라 니동세 공고레스 니동 수 치료 돈도 동바세로와 칭한적에 다음에 가사 다음에 치료 돈도 동바니세 숨쉬어요 안데 다 치료 돈도 동바세야 치료 돈도 마주바리 해야 돼 내려야 미베게 가사 다음에 공고레 니가라 아니 치료 돈도 주바 동바니 치료 돈도 동바들 미제 네 공고레스 제가 치료 돈도 동바들 미네 곰네 예전 삼바 쩨마마이 베게체 치료 돈도 동바들 미네 라도 마도 예바라들 초람 라겔 초람 다 데라 치료 돈도 동바들 실라순의 미네 실라순의 톱네 신의 돈도 동바디 몬숨의 마도 바라들 라겔 초람 다 몬숨의 또네 아니 묘몰 란지 용원이 맞게 봐도 토람 단 란지 문인 제반에 아니 묘모바 치료된도 두바 라서 진배 묘모바 찾아 마바 봐도 아니 냐 곰람 우마바 지 우마바라데 니가 소순 자모지 우마바라셔다 진짜 우마바 땡큐바다 란지바 니가 우마바 날레데로와 우마베기 갈라고르세네 곰지어 쪼거들라 아 니동해 거래
니카 니동 토코레 니카세나 이 년토다 안겔 니카
다들 랑제기 지시오라 데 년토 되기 시사로와 제가 랑제다 년토니 캬바르 가르 요래랍나 대시 제가 마와도 되데반니기 캬바르 요 말에 캬바르 가르 요선 콘이 초사에 윤윤을 캬바 요르마도 곰지어 쪼거들레 캬바르 요 말에스 다 가사 다며 곰야 지바레스 디디소하다 권유 개발 하셨으나 초사의 윤리로 매야 개발요래서 디란제다 가사란제다 제라마와니 돌디바다 제라마와니 송다리와 다들 셈자바 우마바베니 송다지듬 권이라 따와 검제를 개발요래서 년뒤 남냠는 제한디기 가사 다음에 지부 공물마도 니동세도 공공 말해서 공공 말해라래 다란제 냠는 제한디기 가사 다음에 공고를 니가라 니동 쪼어지는 공고래서 어두신데 검제 쪼월에 개발들이 다 검제 쪼월들라 실라 손데 소람 톱네 실라 손데 마토 기바들라 니도라 미베 실라 손데 마토 베파라들라 라제 소람 다란 니도라 미네 실라 손데 톱네 니동 온숨데 마토 베파라들라 라제 졸람 강사 다음에 니도 니가 하면 비실라서는 두고 라지 제 조어된 진이다 다 니동 원숨도 또네 강사 다음에 니도 니가 원숨도 또 차네 다 녀몽을 한지기 원인 귤라마지 봐도 통람 그봐 다되네 년들 한지 녀몽 한지 원인 귤라제네 디 마방이 빠르다 곰람 디방산에다 라제 졸람바 라제 가사 라제 자침바세 최고래지 다디니 곰절을 해버려래 제거를 다 우마 샘잠바도 우마베기 란제다 년들이들 곰절을 곰절 해버려래지 제가 뭐다 되대버게 곰절을 해버려 말에 초사의 윤이 로망고 될 해버려래서 디송다 디다다셔서 아야
So for the hero and solitary realizers, they have the same 5 paths with the same boundaries, beginning and end point. And across the 4 philosophical schools, there is agreement on that. Where there's a difference in presentation between the 4 philosophical schools is the lower 2, Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, state that the only difference between the hero and solitary realizers is the amount of merit that's accumulated and therefore the length of time that it takes for a hero as opposed to a solitary realizer to progress through the 5 paths and therefore attain the result. So the only difference, according to the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, between a hero and solitary realizer is the amount of merit to be accumulated and therefore the duration of their progression along the 5 paths. The 2 higher schools, philosophical schools, the Chittamatra and Madhyamaka, they state that there is an additional difference between the hero and solitary realizer, not just in terms of the merit, the amount of merit required, but there is a difference in their object of meditation. So what the Chittamatra and Madhyamaka state is that for the hero, they only need to realize the selflessness of persons. But for the solitary realizer, they need to realize, in addition to the selflessness of persons, they also need to realize non-duality of subject and object. So there is an additional object of meditation that the solitary realizer needs to realize, and which the hero does not need to realize. So this is a difference between the presentation of the Chittamatra and Madhyamaka as opposed to the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika. So just to recap, the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika state that the only difference between heroes and solitary realizers is their duration of their progression along the 5 paths, whereas the Chittamatra and Madhyamaka say that is not the only difference. The solitary realizers have an additional object of meditation. Both the hero and solitary realizer needs to realize the selflessness of persons, but the solitary realizer also needs to realize non-duality. So this is a different presentation from the Chittamatra and Madhyamaka, but all 4 schools agree that with the same 5 paths and their boundaries between the 5 paths. But for the Chittamatra and Madhyamaka, they state that the solitary realizer, to progress from the path of accumulation to the path of preparation, not only do they need to realize selflessness of persons, they also need to realize non-duality. That would be inferential. And when they realize both selflessness of persons and non-duality directly, they attain the path of seeing. So this then, the difference between the Madhyamaka, between the Chittamatra, so what the Chittamatrans and Madhyamaka state is the difference between a solitary realizer and a hero is that a solitary realizer has an additional object of meditation, that of non-duality.
Komlam du chen samda deso nyamlen chida dene rimba dene yungore deso rimba dela dene da chachumbe devo tugore sambe samda de dene gi samde di kewe nyamlen di be yakore da de kono dene gi nyamlen di nyamlen jebal lam deso nyamlen jebal dene ma zo nyande chachuma da ranje chachumbe devo ane dengi dewa kowa le pampe pamba di 데 람데 중냠나 지 톡톡톡고 제가 되니게 개와 빼야버려 삼삼다이도 제가 다 자주주주 개사와 될라지수 이런 것에 제가 년대 저점마다 란제 저심을 저부터에 규들에 삼다지 안 규들에 개와 될라 니지수 이라지야 돼 야버려서야 돼 들어봐다.
Reading those first two lines again, I rejoice in that accumulation of virtue that becomes the cause for enlightenment. So here we are rejoicing in all these endeavors that the practitioners of Hira and solitary realizer lineage have engaged in, coming to reflect well on the faults of samsara, giving rise to a determination to emerge from the suffering realms of samsara, and with that in mind, they have engaged in the cultivation of extensive accumulation of virtue, meditating on selflessness, non-duality, and so forth, all in order to attain their respective goal, either the small enlightenment of a hira or the middling enlightenment of a solitary realizer. So here we are rejoicing in all their endeavors in this accumulation of virtue, or these accumulation of these varying virtuous minds.
Luchen semjen sezo semjen kowe dunga dele kowe dunga lipa tarje ane bangne kowe dunga dele tarje tarbeki dewa dengi dewa toptunge tarbas야지 be 약보를 봐서면 인사인데 제 삼야들라 다 제부 tar바들라 년도 저지면 저보다 라니 저지면 저부 tar바들라 수수이란 제발에 해야지 말마다 톱건디기를 나오지 기심마다 톱 미주 남가른 냠는 제발에서 조람 졸람 통랑 곰란디 냠는 제발에 때네 다 자주미고 토고로 와다 미션다 톱도여로 여러 제가 자주미고 되네 토고를 빼 약보를 했으면 되네게 톱도여 봐디 제보디 냠 람디신가 냠수 렘발레데 가린 것은 제보디 아주 냠네 코르에 류신디기 파 타르진 코발레 타르진 아니 땡기 대바 타르바 토바레 디네 토건 타르바 톱딩이 타르바디기 빼 약보를 했으면 지수이라죠 다 타르바딩 안주 줄로 요 말다 미션다 줄로 톱도여서 델레 지수이라죠 알아 다디 소소라랑 지수이라제데 소소라랑기 다디시 람가 바딩이 되네게 냠는 람디 냠는 지투는 빼 약보를 해서 마삼바나 다 냠는 마음바나데 지기로 봐이 냠는 제발할 때는 다 소소라랑게 되네게 년여다 저주미지부 톱토는 빼야고를 했으면 삼다나 톱톱나 야고를 해서 마음바기 시오로다 마음바나 된 톱도 빼야고를 했으면 대시다데 세당보 세데 미션다게 냠는 제들라자 미션다게 귤지부 톱된 건줄 야고를 했으면도 안디 야고를 했으면 소소이네 어디 가디야 토디 톱네 야고를 했으면 삼도 지기도 와 다들 가서 그 지수이란 제약이 다 개화되어 말다 이내다 마음바나 톱나 야고를 했으면 다 지수이란 책 말하다 띵원되서로 책으로 야고를 했어야 돼.
The second two lines, I rejoice, the second set of two lines, I rejoice in the certain liberation of sentient beings from the sufferings of samsara. This is still referring to those of hero and solitary realizer lineage, but these two lines refer to the result. The first two lines were the cause, which is the accumulation of virtue, whereas now we are rejoicing in their certain liberation, their liberation that they are going to achieve. So these beings who are progressing along the paths, along the four paths, leading towards the attainment of the fifth path, or the attainment of small and middling enlightenment. Here we rejoice in what they are to achieve. And rejoicing in the achievements of others leads to us developing a confidence, a determination to strive in our own spiritual progression.
가젤레 타바 토베기 년대자 좀마다 라니에자 주면 제부 토베기 유들 봐도 진에 삼당 된데된 연구를 해서 두 신의 하고와 진에 되게 삼당에는 다외는 다 유디 야보인 바디 하 고투야 될라데네 아니 제보 다주메 제보 토두고 다주메 제보 토업나 디네 띵이 되어버려 다 디네 동안 용어야 요 말에 대반 대화장야래 선배 디네 빼야버려 선배 지수 일하지 차이로와 나 디네 가서 다 규디기 10초를 삼다 마토보이네 다 타바토비 규다 규디기 빼야버려 개바디 약버려 다 타바시 톱나도 빼면서 약버려 타바디기 미진 토베 타바디기 빼야버려 선배 지수 일하지 용구로 와다.
So I've taken a bit of time tonight to describe what it is we are rejoicing in here, so that when one does rejoice in those who are striving for liberation, that one is actually rejoicing in something rather than just merely expressing words. So here we are rejoicing in the great endeavors that these practitioners have made, reflecting deeply on the faults of samsara, giving rise to determination to gain freedom from this prison of suffering. Moreover, we're rejoicing in their happiness. We are giving rise to delight, to joy in the happiness that they are experiencing in their journey towards the attainment of liberation.
아니 내가 최시를 지내 가서 저기 내수를 하고 야게 나를 뒤뒤 좀 받지 말라면 방아도 쉬어와 디나데 지단 귤리시스 일하지마도 레레레는 믹스이 디나도요 말이나다 디도나라 디나로 귤리시스 일하지 오라서도 귤디가레선 데네데네레서데 바진 발마선 두스레서 쉬어로.
So whilst these are not the goals of the practitioner of the Mahayana, nevertheless one takes great joy in those who are bringing an end to their suffering, those who are accumulating extensive virtue. But to actually be able to rejoice in this way, one needs to have this understanding of just what they are actually achieving. Hence, I've taken some time to explain it tonight.
다대지 녀래 아주 가셔바들 당보 규딜에 지수이라제 딘 제벌 지수이라 셔서데 신녀래 여러와 다데네 가르송으로서 녀래야 제보들 지수이라제 규딜에 지수이라제 바데 쇼를 송고도 아디나데 마 당보 규딜에 지바레데 이내 당보 규레 제보들 지수이라제 딘 규레 지수이라제 송고도 아디나는 마 차바 쳔벽이 야 장상예기 상예기 토베기 규단 제보 상인이 될래야 아니 시행 송요도 당보 상기 제보들이야 지수이라제 되네 아니 상기 토에 규들이야 지수이나 제가 송도 되마.
So in the second verse, we rejoice in first the causes and then the results. The causes that will lead to individual liberation, and then the results of the progression towards an attainment, the certain attainment of liberation. Now in the third verse, maybe could someone just turn that upside down? Thank you. In the third verse, one comes to rejoice first in the result, that is Buddhahood, and secondly, the causes for Buddhahood. So in the second verse, the rejoicing was first in cause and then effect. Now in the brief third verse, one rejoices in the effect, which is Buddhahood, and thereafter the causes for Buddhahood.
지delada 교반 남지 자슈다 게세라야 이랑모스 샘진 담진 대제베 아니 투기게 와자 초당 샘진 펜바 제발라 가베지수 이랑모스.
So reading the third and fourth verses together, I rejoice in the enlightenment of the protectors and also in the grounds of the Bodhisattvas. With delight I rejoice in the ocean of virtue from generating bodhicitta, which brings about the happiness of all beings, and in the actions benefiting sentient beings.
대신아 자주들 자주 충원 등 첨보서 상기기 고반들이야 자주 첨보서 자주 첨보서 다디 자주세 자주 첨보 대신에 대 자주세 자주 충원이 되마 나 교반 남기 자주당은 교바랍디다 상기 송으로 상기 저기 교반 남기 있어 코베 동아래 타로 교반 남기 근데 동아 타달래 타바도 람든 냠는 람든 최시에 람든 제 코유동아 타달에 타르지야 상계설을 티버제바디 아니 좁아 상계 줍는데 남 상계 남세다 상계 좀 지부만 봐 상계 차상을 고 상계 남기 대 내내 상계체 강사디 상계 녀모바 빵바 타르신바다 녀모 바차다 제바 빵바 최탐지 원선도 배 타르신비 예시 내가 장축세로다 장축세 니 귤에 된디게 상계 장축다 디 귤에 된배 상계되다 상계되려야 네 직지수이라지 인세되다 디네게 삼다에 대한 좀 지수이라지 인세되다 담보도 순고로다 디마송셨네.
First line, I rejoice in the enlightenment of protectors. So here, again, you see the word enlightenment. Here, enlightenment refers to the great enlightenment, whereas in the second verse, the enlightenment there was the small and middling enlightenment. The small enlightenment is that of the hearers, the middling enlightenment is that of the solitary realizers, and the great enlightenment is that which is what Bodhisattvas achieve. Great enlightenment is Buddhahood. So the great enlightenment is what is being rejoiced in here in the first line of the third verse. And the term protectors, so it's in English we have it as a plural, and in the Tibetan it's explicitly as a plural. So it refers to, therefore, to all Buddhas. And a Buddha is a being who has abandoned not only the afflictions together with their seeds, but also and uniquely the imprints of the afflictions. So this is what's being rejoiced in, the enlightenment of the Buddhas.
And and come down Meva, Samba Tumbigi, Yamli Rimba Tenje, and then JSMJ and Tamje Korea Dungal Treasure, Yatarva Tapiki Melukova Chigore, said the nigger Sanje said, Jike Sanji Kichi, Jelens from Lega Dusri, Dine Sanji, Yakuridua, Sambi Sanji Kova said, she which read was some diana, Jesuira said. That's Sanji said, and she sang Ye Labdu, Sanji Koron, Yomo Pasha, and Jeva Pangba Toto Pangbe Yende, and the Chetam wasn't about Tarchimbi Yeshe, Janchups, or the Nitor, Yenden de Bear or Sanji Gid, my Che Sunyada, Yenden Shanley, Che Sunya Yendi, that Sanji Yugi, Chetam also the Tarchimbi Yeshe, Digi Yenchi, the Sungo, Jeza Janchups, the to Janchup Tiki, Yakushur, the Hang Sayag, that delay Pando Chewa, the Manzulia, the Jigge, Zachewa, the Pando Chewa, delay. Clabach Kai Yomare, Payakuridoa, Sambe Ducine, Gumze Samda, Jebajin, the Neko Yakurisha Chisuira Samdade, Jeba in Tangajugi, Jobanam, Jachuli Chisuira Jeba, Sanjeda, Digi, and the Concho Gasore, Chedrin was to be touching be Yesheda, Yomo Bacha, the Jeba Pumbi, Pumba, Goten, Odis Chisuira Jeba Sungore.
Here one is rejoicing in all that the protectors or the Buddhas have done in order to achieve the great enlightenment, which is having not only through first or initially meditating on the faults of samsara, giving rise to a determination to gain freedom from samsara, and then generating independence on that, bodhicitta, taking personal responsibility for the welfare of all sentient beings. And having generated bodhicitta, then striving for lifetimes to accumulate all the causes required to become a Buddha for the sake of others. And in this process of accumulating all the causes or all good qualities, they abandoned not only the afflictions and the seeds of the afflictions, but the imprints too. And in that way have developed the omniscient exalted wisdom of the Buddhas. And thereby all good qualities have also been developed completely or perfectly. That is, with that understanding, one rejoices in the enlightenment of the protectors.
Da Geshe la Irango Sida, that JVC, Janju Semba Papa, Pabe Gaza, that is so, Bemasiki, that Yom Sanjiki, Tobi Chedo, Yam Lamlia, Yamle Rimba Chen, that Sanji, JVC, Janju Semba, and Sajuba La Soba in 상계단 자와 먼저 도나 상계단 전시선바 사주바디 예와 치투에 메디겐 연대 베샬리아 펜바 야치모 시우주 투엔 데네게 잡아천레쇼 야치모 주투야 상기 년네 예외세 전시선바 안에 파피 강사 데설야 나나야 데딩이 건주기 연대의 전시선바 파파 코로나조다 데네게 데서 에마세샬리아 지게 투제 원게 뒤다 남바고나 상계 나신 샬리아 펜바 주투게 두고랑 코로나주길래 녀모바 데네게 빵비 빵바다 두기 연된 캠베 연된 된데 빼야버려 선배 지수이라지야디 당연 게세라 이런 것을 게세 전시선 받아라 이 지수이라지 있어야지.
The second line in the third verse, and also in the grounds of the Bodhisattvas. So here one is rejoicing in the Arya Bodhisattvas, so those on the Bodhisattva grounds, from the first to the 10th ground. So here there's no need to differentiate between a bodhisattva, whether they're on the first Arya ground or on the 10th or Arya ground or anywhere in between. One rejoices in these remarkable beings who are striving to become a Buddha for the sake of others. So they are striving for the great enlightenment that's referred in the first line, the great enlightenment of the protectors. And they have already attained the Arya grounds of bodhisattvas. So it's in their incredible qualities that one here rejoices in.
나심전 담제 대제배 투기 개와 개소당 세대 딘마다 상계다 전주선바 파백이 유류야 안에 제수이라 제바 송고래. semjen damje dezepi tuki kewa jasodang sade nida woni.
Then the first two lines of the fourth verse, with delight I rejoice in the ocean of virtue from generating bodhicitta.
This semjen damje dezepi tuki kewa jasodang sade chisnada sangye sedang sangye de kan chungbare sene ane janju semba papa de ge ni lam nyamlen chebadine sangye chagorwa chisnada janju semba papa de kan sungure la de yugare de yongare la de da janju semba jolam na cholam chagorwa cholam na cholam ni de jing ha shebana jibare janju semba la janju semba cholam jolam tholam kolam milolam se yongurwa na yongurwa dinashi da janju semba cholam da jolam ba de ge yongore ese chisna di 데니게 규데네지 간에 연구를 했어도 semjen 탐제 대제비 투기에 개와자소다 하세도 지선 semjen 탐제 동아 타다다 제제 아니 semjen 탐제 코르 동아 타다 제제 semjen 탐제 연달라 산요고방 토고도 semjen 탐제기 semjen 탐제기 체도 동아 타다를 제제 디기 주비게 체도 아니 투기에 전주 semjen 산요고방 토벌쇼스 전주sem게 janju semge du semge yoda cholamba chasarowa cholambarwa denegi janju semge ne janju semge wi di tiane geshe juba kewa jimba da chujena seba zunjo la soba nyamne je gewa jaso deso le tine ane janju seba papa se da sanje yi ko patike yudeso le tine yongore je nyamne je ba de jugore je 다등에 저기서 초람 마시고 다데 제사대 두기에서 전주선 당부계 이식으로 하다 제사 대시다 전주선 파파시에서로 봐 상계 전주선 파파시에서지 다 상계 전주선 파파데 간데 슝구레라도 초람 졸람 용구로 다 초람 간데 슝구레라비어도 semje 탐제게 된다려야 동아시아 디기주비에게 체도 아니 상계고 토바쇼 어차피 전주선 두기에 전주선 계여도 계고래서 디니게 전주선 계네 전주선 계에 디 군에라데 다 초사 집장지도 초사에게 개와지게 개와 빠도면에 개와 계속시다 집변에 심 타예베 심전 탐제를 미네 개와 중에서 개와지 타예 계속 나신 디네 사바 초사발에 디네 네 초사고래서 디네게 초사발에 디네 토고래제래 예세 자주스 뭐 파파되기 심마 통람 파파세 통람 졸람마도 통람도 검라려와 다 자주스 뭐 파파세데 다 초람도 졸람니도 소소기 버와 소소기 람려와
So in the second line of the third verse, and also in the grounds of the Bodhisattvas. So this is referring to Arya Bodhisattvas, So the grounds of the Bodhisattvas here we should understand to refer to rejoicing in the Arya Bodhisattvas on the paths of seeing and meditation. So it specifically refers to all Arya Bodhisattvas, those on the paths of seeing and meditation, so the third and fourth. Then when we cross into the next verse, so the order in English and Tibetan is quite different. So the first line in the Tibetan in the fourth verse, which brings about the happiness of all beings, and then the second line, and in the ocean of virtue from generating bodhicitta. So these two lines are referring to the causes that lead to the attainment of the Arya grounds of a bodhisattva. In other words, the ordinary bodhisattva, the bodhisattva and the paths of accumulation and preparation. So I'll read it again. It's the third and then the second line in the fourth verse, which brings about the happiness of all beings. And so in other words, now as the person has become a bodhisattva, they've attained the first of the five paths, the path of accumulation, and also Geshe said earlier, the five paths for the bodhisattva are the same enumeration, the same names as for the paths of the hero and solitary realizer that were mentioned earlier. So which brings about the happiness of all beings. So here the path of accumulation of a bodhisattva has been achieved, and they are engaging in the ocean of virtue from generating bodhicitta. So all this accumulation of virtue from acts such as generosity, ethical restraint, patience, and so forth. And these then are the causes that will lead to the later attainment of the Arya Bodhisattva grounds, the path of seeing and meditation.
tarpa tamchi kimbi goba dondala simja tamchi yudino tu kigo reso janju sim geba reso de da janju sim tangbo geba shigyo rowa di solamba di che solamba di gabso da denige janju sim ne gene da dongba nila mibe shila songje mato paradila teshin solamba asi ore teshin solamba as jizna di gabso be geba gyaso asya geba pado me ba sagri asya.
The Mahayana path of accumulation, this is entered into when bodhicitta is uncontrived. So this is what we have here, generating bodhicitta. It refers to uncontrived bodhicitta. And the bodhisattva then remains on the path of accumulation, accumulating virtue, until they come to generate the consciousness of the union of common-abiding meditative insight, realizing emptiness. But until then, they're on the Mahayana path of accumulation, engaging, for us, the final line, or the third line in the Tibetan, the final line in the fourth verse, in the actions benefiting sentient beings. So this is referring to all the virtuous deeds of the bodhisattva. In particular, it's in reference now to ordinary bodhisattvas, those who are in training to become Arya beings.
아니 개와 개소세들의 태신 소람나 태신 졸람 니가 차들래 제산다 동부 대신 태신 소람바 디게 동반일에 미비 실라 손제 주변도 태신 졸람바 차서래 제가 실라 손제 주변에 동반이 온숨나 마도비 바라들라 되나 졸라 태신 졸람바 하시고다 제가 동이 온숨나 또 안에다 태신 파파 차거와 제가 태신 파파 차야디 태신 소람당 태신 졸람니 냠소 렘발에 되네 당보 장주쌤께 초사 집장제 and then it don't buy maybe she near to the nation near to the dinner of the solemn she near to buy it in the don't buy how don't do beyond that she lost on the top side, Tejan Jolamba Chasore. Just not that Tejan Jolamba to get don't buy let me be she near, don't buy let me be lamb, don't buy me be lamb the comba let dinner, don't buy you awesome door do, then Holland Chagdo. Just not that Tejan Papa Chayadi, that don't bought you, Janjusim Solam down. Jolam ni nyam sulem baletine techen pepe kansa delatine yungdu asembe do sometime do denigi sa delatine na jeshusema phakpa jeshusema phakpa delatine nyamne je baletine sa yokoma togudu asembe do sometime do jesan sanje da jeshusema phape yu ane cheche cholamda jolam tigelia ne gewati be jik da sanje toye yu so phape kansa jese phapa chaade anda yu deseletin togudu sembe denegi lamdege za chimoda shiure sembe da yakore sem jesu iran chede ro da mo.
Excluding the first line of the fourth verse, Those 3 lines are referring to the trainings of the ordinary Bodhisattva. The verse before, the 3rd verse, the 2nd line there referred to the Arya Bodhisattva. So that is, and the line before that, the first line in the 3rd verse, was the Buddha. So we have the progression here is from the Buddha to the Arya Bodhisattva, and now in the 4th verse, we are on lines referring to ordinary Bodhisattvas. In the ocean of virtue from generating bodhicitta, which brings about the happiness of all beings and in the actions benefiting sentient beings. So this refers to the ordinary bodhisattvas, those who have generated bodhicitta in an uncontrived manner and have thereby entered the Mahayana path of accumulation, whereby they engage in extensive acts of accumulating of virtue, whilst also meditating. Here their object is on emptiness. And when they come to realize emptiness with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, they cross to the Mahayana path of preparation. So here, the parts of the same name, the word Mahayana can be added just to differentiate that, or to emphasize that these are the parts of the Bodhisattva. So bodhicitta is present in their continuum. So when the Bodhisattva path of preparation is attained, it is attained with the consciousness, which is the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, realizing emptiness. Now with this inferential realization of emptiness, the Bodhisattva is still an ordinary Bodhisattva, but on the path of preparation, preparing for the direct realization of emptiness. When that eventually comes, when the wisdom of the Bodhisattva directly realizes emptiness, they become an Arya Bodhisattva and enter the path of seeing, which is then shortly followed by the attainment of the path of meditation, progressing to the Buddha ground, the path of no more training. So with all that in mind, we delight and rejoice in the Bodhisattvas.
Semjen tamje DZP Turkey ke wa ja so semjen de DZP se de jisa janshu semje de la yang dangbo nye la ne semjen tamje dewa de dena sembe samlo china semjen tamje dunga dan dawo sembe jamni je ta semjen tamje dunga dawo dan dewa demba de nge jigin sebe ke hasan namda ne di dona di inzange janshu sem sanju ko ba to wa sho so janshu semje chegoro dine za semje tamje DZP se di na de ya janshu semje gyu jamni je ane hasan namda de chüde je disu nyamne je de da gawa de du samda de je dan dine ki jamba kumyada, ninjekiyada, lhasa namda, dine janshu semgi. Dine janshu semgi do tsolamba chagor. Tsolamba chabala, dambo teba chimbe tsolam chabala, dambo ninje kumyada, jamba kumyada, dine lhasa namda kumbati kukudus. Sidan di kumbala dine, da janshu semde rangame ba semjatam sanyo kuba tobo shiosibe, janshu sem ko kiyengudwa. Di kiyengdu teshin tsolamba chagdu. Da di tsosa, jibjaje, dine dame la mi be shila sunre komje shila sunre tobyo de tesu jolamba cha teju jolamba deni jolamba dike 동반이라 미비게 검제 동반이 원숨 또요 다 대신 통람바 차용도 제자다 대신 파비에 간사 해야지 차야리야 당보 소람 졸람다 소람 디양 소람 귤에 깨와라 아니 자주심 귤에 깨와라 디냐리야 잠니제 아니 지게 잠바다 니제 하산남다 깨와도 고도 왔을 먼저 람이 자와디게데 닝시디레도 선배게 되니 배워래 선배 삼다에도 다 귤에 지수이라 산조고마도 귤에 상계다 전시스마 파비기 토야의 귤에 지수게 지라 이라지바 책으로 와.
What is being rejoiced in this fourth line, in this fourth verse, is even more extensive than what is explicitly mentioned here, because one is also rejoicing in all the causes that led to the generation of bodhicitta, what's mentioned in the second line. So one will rejoice in the Bodhisattva's prior extensive meditation on sufferings of samsara giving rise to definite emergence, and with that as a basis, generating actual love and compassion, the deep yearning for all beings, not just oneself, to gain freedom from suffering, compassion, to abide in lasting happiness, love. And on that basis, generating the wholehearted resolve or the altruistic attitude of universal responsibility, where the practitioner takes personal responsibility for others' welfare, for others being guided to attainment of freedom. This is the attitude of universal responsibility. And this then is developed into bodhicitta, where one makes a commitment to become a Buddha so that one can actually lead others to a state of freedom from suffering. And that's the initial generation of bodhicitta. But actual bodhicitta is when the meditator is so conditioned to the mind of enlightenment, to bodhicitta itself, that it arises in a manner that's uncontrived. It doesn't need to be artificially generated. So these are all the prior causes that lead to what we have in our second line, generating bodhicitta. So this is all rejoiced in here, as well as then the variety of wholesome deeds that the bodhisattva engages in on the path of accumulation, as well as then when emptiness has been realized inferentially with the union of calm abiding meditative insight, and the bodhisattva has progressed to the path of preparation. So all of this is rejoicing the meditations prior to the attainment of the path of accumulation, as well as all the virtue that's accumulated on the paths of accumulation and preparation. All of this is rejoiced in.
Digi Juya dan Rangi Jibu Chido Mayimba, Semjen Tam Jele Pembi Chido, Semjen Kunla Kasa, Denma Sikde, Semjen Pemba Zebala, Gawe Chisu Irango, Semjen Pemba Zeba, Sidu, Jezan Janshu, Semjo Tukie, Semjen Tamjig, Semjen Dungasia, Tukie, then Solana Jolamini, Sosa Dipjan Jeba, Gawa Juya, Semjen Tam Jele Pembi Chidu Jebares, Jezan Dini Jeban, Ben Masigeda, Dinigi, Jam Nijegom, Jaju Semje, Dinigi, Anjiki Sosa, Dipjan Jet, Casa Damian Bal, Mipe, Tombani, Castombani, Mipe, Shineo, Comanda, Haldon Juya, Gawa Juya. Simjian Tamjig doing the Zebarepe, Masibe Gawa Chembo, the Nigi, Paudomeva, Jig, Dinam Jebalet in the Tarvata, Sakasa, Jajusa, Pabia Kaza, Toya, Delet in the San Yokova, Yungore, Beagoresha, Sambi, the Nigi, Toba Beagoresha, Sambigeta, Yagoresha, somebody that Gavish Hiram, Dele Gawakin Sisira, the Negavish Ira. Dine Jesu Yuna Jedu, on Niki and Arine, Dine Jetun the Bay, on Saturday, me and the Chetuba chicken Sambi, that on Zuge, that Yintopna, and the Chick, Dumbaki Haglia, and the Pingoro, Jigoro, on Dushin and Nia, Dine Chetuba chicken, chicken Sambi, Dushin Jore, said Sungoro down.
What? When rejoicing in the qualities of a bodhisattva, one should explicitly, or in particular, one should call to mind what we have in the third line, this all beings, because it's just a three-letter word, all, but this is the unique aspect of the bodhisattva. They are striving for all sentient beings, not merely for themselves. So the heroes and solitary realizers, whose great endeavors we rejoiced in earlier, they were striving for their own individual enlightenment. But the bodhisattva is striving for the great enlightenment, an enlightenment that is to serve all beings. This is what is being rejoiced in here. So the bodhisattva, even from the very outset, from when they attain the Mahayana path of accumulation and progress through the path of preparation, this entire time, so long before they become an Arya being, their motivation is to help all sentient beings, not merely themselves. And what this means is all the virtuous activities that this ordinary bodhisattva is engaging in, generosity, ethics, patience, and so forth, these are being done for the sake of others. And any hardships that are experienced, or any hardships that are encountered, are not experienced as hardships because they are seen as means by which to benefit others, directly or indirectly. So here we are rejoicing in these great deeds of bodhisattvas. So we're rejoicing in what others are doing right now, as well as what others have been doing up to this point. And we also, then in addition to rejoicing in others, we rejoice in our own future attainment of the Mahayana paths. We rejoice that we too, through this merit, will strive and eventually also attain the Mahayana paths. So we rejoice in the virtue of ordinary bodhisattvas, as well as rejoicing in our own endeavors that will eventually lead us to also attaining the paths of the Mahayana.
Devo Tarbale, Chisuiranchea, Dinashin, that's on yet, and Jusima Pape Ganza, Lam Yamling Rimbadelia, Chisuiranchea, De Tobu, Solam, Jolam, and the Jamini, Jajusimlia, Chisuiran, de some that Yawaresha, Sambeg Yaware, some logic, Yahuresioda, the Nigi Chisuira, Kasi, Shukcheva Drovene, Ralia, Shukche Levena, the Sosugula, Yamlin. Jigupane, Yamlet Yomo compete pair, so Sugula Yamnachiva Yapore, Shanicheva Yapores. That's so Sugula, the Nig Yamnet, the top of the Gula came up by now, the Nig Yavat Gumse, some that Yapore, some big Yapore, some other, Dikaze Yapore, some and Anzula, or Dian Toku, the Sempigate, Anzulia, Din Yamlin Jeg, Daniel Dumba, Daniel Dumbalia, Din Yamlin Jelia, and the same should add the Anjig, Odusian Agandala, the Sungora, Deza, the Niki, Gumse, Samta, the Nega Samta to Yende, Kazi, Tona, Tone, and Jisuira Levina, Delia, Sosuin Yamlin Jeg, Dumbati, Shucher, Sosenia, Debata, Dumba Shucher, Debata, Dumba Shucher, Roban, Digi, and Tikasur, Yamle, Zuelia, Chicket, Joa Zuedan. And look again, you like it to a cavering gold was an Ajisuira, said Danganzugi Dandala, Mahanzula, Korea, Dumala, Tarpa, the Tamji, Mokovan, Toyagi, Dunyagi, Dumbaki, Tablam delia, Nick, that it is on the Kavala Jesuira, said Yendi Tonche, Della Jesuira, Mahanzula did Dunyagi, Dumbaki, or the Tablam Chavarodi, and I did Disungor.
So we've looked at the second, third, and fourth verse tonight, but briefly including the first verse referenced last week, that was rejoicing in the virtues that ordinary beings attain, the causes and results of ordinary beings. Here tonight we've looked explicitly first at those who are accumulating causes that will lead to their own individual liberation, the small and middling enlightenment of hearers and solitary realizers, as well as the attainment of the results of individual liberation. So that was in the second verse. In the third then, one rejoiced in the final result of Buddhahood, and then rejoiced in the qualities of those approaching Buddhahood, the Arya Bodhisattvas. And then in the most recent verse, the fourth verse, rejoiced in the qualities of those ordinary bodhisattvas, as well as the causes that led to their generation of uncontrived bodhicitta, namely contrived bodhicitta and minds such as love and compassion, definite emergence, and so forth. So here we rejoice in all these good qualities of beings. And the reason for doing so is, on one hand, it can be said in brief, we create virtue by rejoicing in the good qualities of others. And that is alone a reason to spend time rejoicing. But the accompanying benefit is also, there's an accompanying benefit of perhaps even greater value, which by rejoicing in the qualities of others, or to translate it differently, appreciating the qualities of others, this gives rise or strengthens one's own determination to emulate them, especially when we're looking at beings who we aspire to be just like, qualities we aspire to generate within. By appreciating or rejoicing in what others have achieved, we strengthen our determination to follow in their footsteps. So it's this second reason. The first was the accumulation of merit, which the accumulation of merit is literally the generation of virtuous minds oneself. But in addition to this, one is strengthening one's own determination to follow in the footsteps of one's role models. In our case, that's the Bodhisattvas, both ordinary and Arya, as well as the Buddhas. Hence, this practice of rejoicing is so skillful and something for us all to spend time on. Okay, thank you. Then we can conclude there for tonight. But if you have questions, then please feel free to ask. Tsepa?
I'm just wondering what the reason that Chittamatra and the Madhyamika, particularly the Prasangika Madhyamika, have for the hearers and solitary realizers having the solitary realizers having the extra need to realize non-duality.
So in particular, the Prasangika, why do they assert that the solitary realizer needs to realize non-duality? They have that additional object of meditation, yeah?
tenyu chibu yi shebe na tenyu bugi geshe na la ni don to hu re ma do gomje zo le kya je ma da rang ja da nian de da je sen ba lo dong ba ni gong bu ba ji ba de da tenyu bu khorong ji shebe na tenyu bu khorong ji bu ge shebe na nian de de ge ga sa da me to hu re je sen ba da nian de rang yu sum ga ga sa da me da ni dong sum ga to hu re yin da 년도에 검주소 가르쳐서 동반이라래 라게야 검주소 동이래 전시선바 다시 검주소 동이래 개발 검주소를 개발 강야 말 된주비 지부 제발.
So if you ask why Prasangika in particular, then the conversation goes to a more precise or deeper level than was presented earlier, because earlier Prasangika wasn't specifically mentioned, because Prasangika holds that all three lineage of practitioner, whether hero, solitary realizer, or bodhisattva, all have the same object of meditation. They have to realize selflessness, non-duality, emptiness, and the Prasangika do not differentiate between that, between the practitioner. They say whatever lineage a practitioner is, they need to have the same realization of emptiness. But the Svatantika, they don't present, they do not say this. They do not, they do make a differentiation between the objects of meditation of the different lineage of practitioner. So the Svatantika Madhyamaka, they say that the hearer has as an object of meditation, selflessness, Gansaki Dakme. So the hearer has the selflessness of persons as their object of meditation, the solitary realizer has non-duality, and the bodhisattva has the wisdom realizing emptiness, or has emptiness as the object of meditation.
다 랑게당 장주선바 니가게 검주소어서 니동의 검주소어체 거래라 고니를 검주소어라 캬버 요말 셈잠발라 동바니 랑신주비 동바세데 셈잠베 힐링고 말어 완자 셈잠베기 가르송 검주소어 장주선바당 랑니 검주소어 니동의 직발에 가사 다음에 검고를 조 니동들이다.
The Chittamatrans, they say that there is a difference, they also have assert a difference in the object of meditation, but it differs from that of the Svatantika Madhyamaka. So for the Chittamatrans, they say the hearer only needs to realize the selflessness of persons, whereas the solitary realizer and the bodhisattva only need to realize non-duality. Chittamatrans do not assert emptiness. So their presentation, the Chittamatrans, differs from the Svatantika Madhyamakas, which also differs from the Prasangika Madhyamakas.
Okay.